these are things that you can sign up for when you're 18 years old, and you can quickly rack up tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt.
But you're gonna have to sacrifice a little bit, because obviously you racked up all this debt. You need to like really cut your lifestyle back, maybe get like 3 part-time jobs too, and kill it.
You have to go through some hard stuff so that you know that you're not going to go back into this.
Big financial decisions are so emotional, and half the time make the decision off of the emotions instead of like the logic instead, you know?
Welcome back to the show. Lauren and I are back for our weekly episode where we talk all things money. Lauren, I feel like one of the most controversial money takes I have is that I honestly just don't think that most people should be using credit cards. And I always get pushback on that. And, you know, those people tend to say something like there's tons of benefits, or you get good protection when you use a credit card, and that people shouldn't really just avoid them. They should just learn how to use them the right way. And look, like, honestly, like, I don't disagree with that. But I feel like the problem is most Americans just can't seem to figure out how to use credit cards or really any kind of debt the right way. And like, I'm not like anti-credit card. I'm anti like, don't use a credit card if you don't know how to use it, you know?
Yeah, the reason people push back on that is because most people aren't using credit cards the right way. So yeah. They're justifying their behaviors. But I completely agree with you. I do use credit cards. Like, I'm not on the side of like, you know, credit cards are bad or anything like that, because I use it for everything I would just normally spend on, you know, groceries, any type of utility I can or subscription. I'll put that on my credit card. And I like it for like the protection reasons, you know. I was just talking to my mom about this because she's a big like put everything on her bank account or our debit card, you know. And I'm like, Mom, like, but they can get to like your money and that. So that's why I prefer, you know, the credit card. But this does not, you know, it doesn't justify just spending out of control and racking up credit card debt just because it's safer, or, you know, people just need to learn how to use them. Like, they don't know how to use them. So that's the biggest thing. I don't know. But yeah, I totally see the issue here.
Yeah, and I wanted to look it up, and the average household debt in America for credit cards only, this isn't including other forms of debt, is about $6,500, which is crazy to think. I think it's something like 1.2 trillion for the entire country, but $6,500 across, you know, just like an average household debt I mean, it's not like an insane amount, but that's not factoring in like other forms of debt, like if there's mortgages, car loans, student loans, personal loans, things like that. And you start to think like, all right, now you're probably adding in a few different forms of debt there. That's how people's budget and spending can definitely get out of control, because there's probably a handful of debts there that are all, you know, monthly costs there. And that's when like the income doesn't start to meet what you need it to because of all these forms of debt that are taking away your income.
Yeah, we've talked about before, like when you think that you can afford a payment on something, and then you just keep increasing your payments, and then you're like, oh shoot, like now I'm like have less income because I have to make it for all these payments. Same thing with credit cards. It usually starts out pretty innocent. Like, okay, I'm going to put this one big thing on the credit card. I know I can pay it off next month. Fine. But then something else happens and something else happens, or, you know, and then you need to use that money for something else. So you don't get to put extra money towards your credit card. And then suddenly you're in thousands of dollars of credit card debt, because that's how it quickly snowballs into that. So yeah, it's a nasty problem. But if people did know how to use credit cards better, then I would say you should use a credit card if you know how. But I probably give that advice to like 2% of people, because the rest of them can't handle it.
100%. And you said like it usually starts off innocent, and I think that's the perfect segue into this first one. So why don't we jump into it?
Yeah. So this one says, horrible financial mistake at 18, and I'm still paying for it 11 years later. When I was 18, I opened a bunch of credit cards thinking it was a smart move for the rewards, but it went downhill quickly. I racked up $75,000 in debt, and it's taken me 11 years to get it down to $34,000. I make $106K a year, and with a mortgage, living expenses, and everything else, I feel like I'm just racking it back up since I have nothing spare to throw at it. I've been doing personal loans and debt consolidation loans to bring the monthly payments down with a better interest rate, but at this point, I feel like I'm drowning.
Oh, that sucks, because you open it up at 18, and it's the same deal with like student loans. You know, these are things that you can sign up for when you're 18 years old, and you can quickly rack up hundreds of thousands, tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And to be paying on it for 11 years and to barely cut it in half, like, I mean, $75,000 is no joke, but 11 years is, you know, over a decade of your life. Like one of the best decades of this person's life to, you know, potentially be investing, and that money could grow to so much more by the time they hit retirement. But instead they're paying for a mistake that they made at 18, which just sucks. But yeah, I mean, I mean, honestly, like I would be curious what their spending looks like because they make $106,000 a year, which depending on where they live, like that's a pretty good income, you know? Now, if they're living in like the Bay Area or New York, like, okay, that's a different story. But if they're living for the majority of how Americans where they live, like 106K, like I'm curious where their money is going to where they've only been able to cut this debt in half over 11 years.
Well, if you think about it, when they got those credit cards, my guess is they, lived a life they really couldn't afford. Obviously, how do you get to 75,000? And we talked about 1,000 times. It's really hard to then, cut back your lifestyle to get into range of what you actually make. So that's probably the biggest issue here is they don't know how to live lower than, within their means, below their means, whatever, to get this paid off. So that's probably been why it's been 11 years. But this person's not even 30 yet. I feel like $106,000 a year. I don't know what you're doing. It doesn't say they have kids or family or anything. And if they don't, like I'm getting a roommate, I'm going to do everything I can to get that debt paid off. This would be a situation where I'm going to sacrifice literally everything until that $34,000 is paid off, because after that, that's whenever things can get a lot better and they won't feel like they're living paycheck to paycheck just to pay off this debt. But you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit because obviously you racked up all this debt. You need to like really cut your lifestyle back, maybe get like 3 part-time jobs too and kill it. I mean, $75,000 should not have taken you 11 years to pay off making 106 if you were intentional about it and not putting more on top of that,
Yeah, like what they don't want to happen is to spend another, like the next decade of their life, their 30s, paying this down to zero. If they buckle down over the next like 2 or 3 years at most, I would say, like, I think they can get $34,000 paid off. Now, granted, like those credit cards are probably 25-30% interest, but like the sooner, like the quicker you move, the less interest you're going to pay. And like, that's really the name of the game with getting out of credit card debt is like, you got to move quick. And like you said, like getting on a super, super tight budget and finding any way possible to increase your income. Like that's the only way to do it. Like if over the last 11 years, they haven't been intentional with their budgeting, like that's cost them so much time and money. Like that's, I don't know, to me, like that's always one of the first places to start is like, where's your money actually going? Because 106K is a pretty good income, and to only pay off, what is that? Like $40,000 over 11 years. Like you're not making progress quick enough to where this is just going to keep going on and on and on,
Yeah. And they said that they've been doing personal loans, debt consolidation, and they're still racking it back up because we've talked about it. You can do all these fun things and move your debt around, but until you address the behaviors and habits that got you into it in the first place, you're going to continue to do it. So this person, why are we still even using credit cards at this point? Like we just talked about, it's not for everybody. And this person has not shown that they're, able to use a credit card appropriately. And within, the range of, paying it off every month, because they obviously are not doing that. The personal loans, the debt consolidation is not teaching them much. So first thing I'm doing is getting rid of those credit cards, make your paycheck work and pay off this debt. I don't know. They need to stop the bleeding because it's not, they haven't done much in the past 11 years.
Yeah. On that note of like consolidating debt and like trying to find a shortcut, like we had posted this video of saying that we wouldn't recommend someone using their 401k to pay off their debt, mainly, for 2 reasons. One, like touching your retirement to pay off debt is usually doesn't pay off when you run the numbers over the course of like 40 years of that money being invested. But also like that shortcut is not going to teach them the skills to stay out of debt in the future. Yeah. And like we got some pushback on that because this person was saying like, well, they have they're getting 30% interest, and what is that going to do inside of their 401k at like 6 to 8%? And I'm like that, but that's the bigger part here is like, it's not always the numbers. It's also that if this person, continues to get personal loans or whatever and can lower that interest rate, and then they feel like they've done something, that's how they've taken 11 years to pay off 40 grand. Like that's not enough progress. Like they have to go through, like you had said in that episode too, you have to go through some hard stuff so that know that you're not going to go back into this, because that's the problem with situations like this, is that they can get out of this debt because they take out a personal loan and now the interest rate's not too bad, or they roll it over into a zero balance transfer card and they feel like they've made progress, but like they're really not moving the needle enough to actually get this paid off.
No. But again, Nick, we have a very hard time with adjusting our lifestyle, being super uncomfortable. Like it is so uncomfortable to change, everything about your life that you're currently living to make this happen. They've built themselves up over the past 10 years from when they were 18 till almost 30. And it's like, they would probably have to drastically change their life to make this all work. And that is painful. We know change is hard. So if you can just, the thing is though, if they did that for like, this person could probably pay this off within like 2-3 years and be completely debt free and change this all around. And then they have their 106,000 plus because they're going to be earning more, as the years go on. They're going to have such a better financial situation if they just buckle down for the next 2 or 3 years instead of letting this go on again for another 10 years. So yeah, they have some big opportunities here, but again, you have to change some things. You have to suffer a little and, really make this happen, which I think they can.
Yeah, totally agree. Why don't we move into the next one? So this person wrote, what was your biggest debt mistake? I'll start. My biggest credit mistake was rolling for over a decade believing that carrying a balance and paying interest on a credit card was standard protocol and just what you were supposed to do. I set up auto pay on my credit card for $400 a month and went years and years with a 4-figure balance, throwing away tons of money to interest. I never once thought about how stupid that was financially. And some of the replies to this were that my biggest mistake was co-signing on loans for multiple people. And if I could go back, I would never have done so. Of course, as the script almost always goes, I got burned. Another person put, taking out a $24,000 loan at 14% for a used Kia Soul for 72 months. It's not worth maybe, and then they wrote, it's worth maybe $10,000, but I still owe $19,000 on it. And then another person wrote that they took out a personal loan to consolidate. This is just what we were talking about. Took out a personal loan to consolidate debt. And yep, you guessed it, maxed out the cards again after I rolled them into the loan. Still digging myself out of it.
Yeah, I think we're all just human and make these mistakes. I don't know where this theory of keeping a balance on your credit card came from, because I've heard this. I mean, I was told this too. Yeah. Like, hey, my dad or my mom said to keep just a little bit on your credit card to keep your credit good. And I never fully understood that, but that's what we're told out there. I don't know who told them this, what econ class they were in that told them this, but yeah, and like. The other ones here, like the co-signing on the loans, like, I don't know where that happened. I know that is so dangerous because like you have to think about why the bank is not giving them that loan. And so you probably shouldn't be like co-signing it with them, but big debt mistakes.
I know. I feel like the carrying a balance and paying on it, like the only way I can like justify like how someone gets there in my mind is like, all right, you have to show creditors that you can, like you have a good payment history in the sense of like making payments on time. And it's like, all right, if I carry a balance and they can see that I have that, that I've made that payment every single month, they set up the auto pay. But yeah, it's just like, that's not the same. Like you can show good payment history and not carry a balance. And I don't know where the disconnect is there, but yeah, it's crazy to think that, that is like such a common misconception that people have. But the one I feel like I hear more is the car loan one, where they took out a crazy expensive loan, crazy high interest rate for a used car for I feel like in the past it was like 4 to 5 years, like 5 years being the long end for car loans. And now it's like 6 years plus, 6 to 8 years you can even get on for these car loans, which I mean, I'm all for keeping your car for a long time, but if you're paying 14% interest across that 8 years or 6 years or whatever it is, like you're always going to end up in a situation where you owe so much more than what it's worth. If you ever wanted to sell it or get out of it, like you have to kind of run it down to the bone until you can pay it off. And then you can actually get out of that car loan. Oh
my gosh, I know. And I feel like there's just like predatory, like car dealers out there that will be like, yeah, no credit check. We'll just give you, you've seen those signs. Yeah. You're like, oh my gosh, this is the type of place that is doing this. And I feel like this happens all the time. And then like, how would it even make this worth? Would you have to just keep this car until it just drove into the ground, or how would you fix this?
With a Kia Soul, I don't know how long that thing's gonna last you. Like all cars to do this for, a Kia Soul. I mean, really the only thing this person can do there, I mean, really two options. Can they keep the car for as long as possible, take as best care of it as they can to make sure that it runs the whole life of this loan, or try to take out like a personal loan to cover that gap between what it's worth, what you owe on it. Then you can at least sell it and get out of it. And like you may be out of a car for a couple months, or you can like try to time it well so you could save up some cash. But like, yeah, I just, it's tough to get out of situations like these because that gap is usually 5 to 10 grand. And most people don't have 5 to 10 grand to get out of a car loan like this. Otherwise they probably wouldn't be in a car loan like this,
Yeah, that's really true. And then the last one about the personal loan to consolidate debt. Tale as old as time, Nick, you know?
Yep.
You don't learn anything from that. You just keep doing that and thinking that you're doing something with your debt. And I think, I don't know, we need better financial education, I think, earlier, because why are we all making, not all of us, but like, why are we all making the same exact mistakes? We hear of all of these like all the time. You know what I mean? Like same thing with your credit cards, not knowing how to use them, or, you know, co-signing or taking out an expensive car loan and now you owe way more than it's worth, you know? It's just, I don't know. What I'll say is these people do learn a lesson from this. So, you know, hopefully they don't do it again, but it's just an expensive lesson.
Yeah, I mean, the like you said, the shitty part is like you feel like you've done something, like cool, I've moved it over, like the interest isn't killing me anymore, I feel good, and then it's like, oh, one little expense here, one little one there, and like it's the same behavior, you know, and like if you don't change the behavior, that's why I'm always a big fan of like just pay off the debt, like do it the hard way, because you're gonna learn the skills for like well into the future. But like, yeah, I don't know. I think too many people get stuck in that pattern. But you were saying like I think people should learn this stuff earlier on, and I totally agree. I'm also just trying to be realistic about it too. I'm like at 18 or 17 when I was a senior in high school, like that was probably the best time to learn it. But also like when I was 17 and like about to graduate, like I probably wouldn't have paid as much attention to it as I should have. You know, it's tough because like you want people to learn this stuff, but the only time that they can like, you know, quote unquote, be forced to learn it is in high school. Yeah. When it's not like it's not like useful necessarily for them at that moment. You know, it's a skill that they need to learn early on to help them into adulthood. But then once they get into adulthood, there's no opportunity for them to be, you know, like I said, quote unquote, forced to learn this stuff. Yeah.
I said the same thing about student loans. Like we're taking student loans out and you can't tell somebody like, hey, that's a lot of student loans. Maybe you should go to your community college. You know what I mean? Because they want to go to the school that all their friends are going to, or, you know, whatever. Yeah. Same type of thing. So yeah, I get that. I don't know the approach to this because I had debt. I never had credit card debt, but I didn't start working my debt-free journey until I was like 28. So totally get that.
Lauren, I went to a charter school for high school, and like the big, it was like a small school, like the graduating class sizes were pretty small. And like the big thing for that school, was that they wanted 100% acceptance rate into college. And that came at like, you know, no cost, like, or what was that expression? Like they pulled out all the stops to make sure that happened. Even some shady stuff. But I mean, aside from that, like there was never a conversation of like, hey, can your family afford to do this? Never once was this. And I know like my high school was in like a, you know, East Side San Jose, which if you know is like a, you know, lower income part of the Bay Area. And there was no conversation of like, hey, can your family afford this? Is this the right college for you? And is that degree that you're going for, is that going to give you the best return on investment? Because if you're going to like UCLA or something and you're going for a degree that, you know, the starting salary is unknown because you may not even get a job with it. Like, I don't know. It's just a tough situation. And that's why like now, like when, like I'm always a big proponent, like you don't need to go to college unless your profession that you want to go for requires it. You know, like to me, like I'm not one of those people who say like college is a scam or a waste of money. Like I think there's a time and a place for it. And if you can chart out what you want to do and it requires a college degree, awesome. It's worth it then. But if you know, are just saying like, I feel like what a lot of people do is they use college as like a buffer between turning 18 and being an adult and then actually becoming an adult, you know, like they turn 18 and they're not really sure what to do with their life. And so they're like, cool, now I can at least get like 4 more years to kind of like figure this out. But you're taking on tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. Like, I don't know. It's just, to me, that's when it starts to feel like I get the sentiment of like, it's a scam because so many people fall into that trap of it.
Yeah, definitely. And then like by the time you're out of, you know, school and you're paying off your student loans, then you want to increase your lifestyle more. And then you just like get wrapped up in it. And so I can see like how you start out. I don't know. It's hard. The whole thing is hard. Like it's, you know, you're too young to like make good decisions with money unless you have parents that are like feeding it into you. Yeah. If you're on your own, you know, it's really hard to know what to do. But yeah, it's a tough place to be. I gave a presentation one time to high school kids at like a private Catholic high school. They did not care what I had to say about that. I felt so stupid. Yeah. I thought for sure they were going to be super excited about it. They did not care, Nick. I was talking to them about how to choose a college and all that stuff. They didn't care. So
yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'd love to think, like, you know, I think, what is it, like Florida? I think they have to take a financial literacy, like high school students too, which I think that's really awesome. But at the same time, I'm like thinking of the average high school student. Like when I was in high school, I'm like, dude, maybe like 1 out of the 30 kids in my class or 2 would have been like engaged with this. And the rest of us probably would have just been like, you know, typical high school students. So I don't know. It's a tough situation, but why don't we move into the next one?
Yeah. So this one says, I bought a house and it was the worst mistake ever. Now I'm $370,000 in debt. What do I pay off first? Long story short, I bought a house in 2020 that's completely fallen apart. Within 2 years of owning this house, I've had to replace the roof, all incoming water lines, siding, 2 windows, mold remediation due to leaky roof, gutters, replace a leaky tub, and get a sub pump installed and trench dug under my house for water control, as apparently there's an underground river running under my house. My foundation is also failing, which will be another $65,000 to $100,000 to repair. All of this is why I have the debt I have, and I've been paying on it for 3-ish years. After all the bills and essentials are paid, I have about $150 left at the end of the month. I don't spend on anything extravagant, just the basics. My only savings are a $1,000 emergency fund and 3% of income going into my 401k to get the match. Here are my debts: $180,000 mortgage at 2.75%, $60,000 ARM at 12%, then 13.5% in a few months, $20K personal loan at 12.3%, $12K car loan at 2.55%, about $90K across all 3 repair debts, around 6%.
Geez, what did they put? $370,000 in debt because they bought a house. Like these are like the nightmare stories that like were going through my head when we were like getting ready to buy our first house. It was like, what if this, what if that, and you know, like you get the inspections, the realtor says it all looks good. And then, you know, things that happen that no one could have guessed, or you trust someone that, you know, maybe they just didn't do their job 100% properly. You know, it sucks because you could end up in a situation like this where you buy a home and everything looks good. And then a few months later, something breaks. I mean, like even for us, like we bought our home, we did some remodeling, we took out the water heater, put it back in, and it didn't start the first night that we wanted to like take a hot shower, you know, like and so that was $800 fix right off the bat. But like, it's a shitty situation. But at the same time, like, I'm like, okay, like this isn't like, this sucks. But also like, if you're committed to staying in this house, like, all right, let's just make a plan to get it paid off. The part that makes this really shitty is they only have $150 left at the end of the month. Like $370,000 divided by 150 is more months than I care to like even think about. Like, I don't know, like we can have the conversation of what do you pay off first? And like, you know, what's probably staring at me most is the ARM, the adjustable rate mortgage, because that sucks to have. But at the same time, like if you only have $150, like I don't know where you go from here.
Oh my gosh. I don't think it's staying in this house, if I'm being honest with you. Like, I guess they would have to see like what this thing would even sell for to see if it would cover all of that. Like what if they're like upside down in their house now? But I don't think they can afford this house. If they only have $150 left at the end of the month, they really can't afford this if they're going to have to replace the foundation or something. Who knows if they could even get what they could get for this house, depending on where it is, you know? But it doesn't seem like keeping this house is even an option at this point. I don't feel comfortable. $1,000 emergency fund with all this stuff going on with this house, that's nothing. They're in big trouble.
That's what I was going to say. Like if you have $1,000 emergency fund and the only savings you have going on is like the 3% out of your 401k, and you only have $150 left, like I don't care what the mortgage is, what the interest rate is, like there's almost zero situation where I'm like, yeah, you can afford to do that. Like if you don't have excess funds at the end of the month, like you're in a really tight spot, you know? I mean, yeah, if they can find a way to increase the income, like, all right, now you can make a plan, and like, that's not unrealistic. Or like we had talked about earlier, like, can you find a way to get a roommate? Can you like make this situation a little bit more manageable to where there's something extra at the, like $150, like it's better than nothing, but it almost might as well as be nothing, you know, like you got to find a way to lower the expenses. If that means getting a roommate, taking on a part-time job or whatever. And then, lower the expenses and increase the income. Like that's the only way to get to find room to make progress here.
But Nick, I thought that everybody should be a homeowner, that it always makes sense to own a home.
I think everyone should have the opportunity to be a homeowner, but it doesn't always make sense at that point in time.
No. I mean, they said it was the worst mistake they've ever made. They're literally drowning now because of this house. They have nothing left to show for it at the end of the month. If one thing goes wrong, if they want to go on vacation, they can't. They can't.
Yeah.
You know, it's just so crazy to me because like people are out there just like spilling that like there's probably people out there that would justify that this was a good decision, you know?
Because, hey, at least the house is going up in value.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, this is a scary situation because if the house is not worth, I mean, if they have foundation problem, it might not be worth what they, need it to be to get out of it. They're really stuck. I don't know. I'm trying to get out of this. You might lose a little bit, but it's better than continuing to go into debt for this dang house. Gosh.
Now, let's say that they can't sell the house or they can't, they're underwater with it, like the foundation issues, the amount that they've taken out for it. Like, let's just say like selling it's not an option and they're able to like, free up a little bit more income to start paying. Like, how would you start to approach these different debts here? Like, is there one that's glaringly standing out to you?
What's standing out to me is the fact that they have all this debt and they're still saying that they're going to need more to fix the foundation. So does it even matter? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, what does it even matter if you're paying off debt? You have another $100,000 that you're probably gonna have to use to fix the foundation. So it's just not even like computing to me because like there's so much more that needs fixed. I'm just kind of shocked here.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I was having this conversation with someone who's thinking about going and getting their master's a few years after graduating, and they were like, should I, I have this savings, should I put it towards paying off my existing loans, or should I keep saving it for a future, the future college expenses? And like, it's a very similar situation here. Like, do they pay off the existing repair debt, or do they save it for the future repairs that they're going to have to make here? And like, I don't know. Usually, I'm in the camp that like we had said, you got to stop the bleeding. And so like, we got to cut off the supply of new debt. If one way to put it, you got to cut off the supply of new debt. And so my mind is like, all right, let's make sure that any future costs, whether it's for school or home repairs or whatever it is, like you can do those debt free. Like you can pay for those up front in cash. But yeah, $150 a month. And there's like no way you're going to save up $100,000.
Wow.
Like it's not feasible, right? Like you're just not going to save up $100,000 if $150 a month is all you have. Like it's crazy. I think the best option is to try to find a way to get out of this. And now if you can't, like,
because because if they only have $150 left and they have to add on more debt to take on the cracking foundation or whatever is wrong, they're not going to have that $150 anymore because they're going to be having another payment to make. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that's going to be a couple $100 to $1,000, couple $1,000 per month to just to service that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I just don't know if this is even an issue. I don't think this is like how do I pay off this debt issue? I think it's like, how do you get out of this house, or like take on like a few roommates for each bedroom. So you have like another mortgage payment coming in essentially. But do you even want this house? Because I feel like it's just a curse at this point. Personally, I would just get out of this, even if you had to lose some money in the situation.
Yeah. I think you can kind of run an equation in your head to run the numbers to see like what point does it make sense to actually lose money on this? Because if you were to run these numbers at, the $180K mortgage, the adjustable rate mortgage that's going up to 13%, the personal loans, which I imagine are all to service like the home repairs. Like if you run all of those numbers, like, all right, how long is that going to take you to pay off? How much interest are you going to pay? Well, like, let's just say we could, figure out that number pretty easily. Like maybe that's $200,000 or whatever, or $100,000 in interest alone. Like that's what you could afford to lose on this. Like that's kind of like your break even, your threshold on like how much can I afford to lose? Because it's going to be the same difference, but at that point, at least you're getting out of this sooner. Now if they don't have the equity in it and at that point, like if you're going to take out $100K to do the foundation repair, like I'd rather take out $100K to get out of this debt. If I'm comparing apples to apples here. Yeah,
for sure. This person's probably like, I'm never owning a home again. I'm a renter now. That is what it is.
Yeah. And it sucks because there's shitty situations like this. And then there's, situations which are the complete opposite, where you buy a home, whether it's like an older home or whatever. And like, you don't run into an issue for a few years, and then there's other people who, I imagine this was a like a used house or like an older house, if they had to replace all the incoming water lines. Like I imagine those are old water lines. But like, you know, it happens all the time. Like people buy new builds, new construction, and you know, especially when they do it in large developments, like there's issues with those houses a lot of times, you know, and sometimes like builders will build knowing that there are issues because it's going to be cheaper to figure like who's actually going to catch these issues, and it's going to be cheaper to go that route than it is to make sure that all of it was done properly the first time around. Or sometimes it just happens. You know, sometimes things like that just happen. Yeah,
I think this is a really good situation here to remind people that, you know, make sure you're in a good financial situation before you're buying. And also, this was in 2020. So, you know how the market was back in like 2021. People were just like buying houses sight unseen.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, we have to get in. They might have like a 2.5% interest rate. Oh, yeah, that's it. 2.75% interest rate.
Yeah.
So they have a really low interest rate. So they thought this is a great opportunity to buy a house. So maybe they skipped the inspection or something like that. But that is also something to look at. If all of this, I mean, they should have known most of this. You know, if they had that done, and they could have known well in advance, like, A, I'm not in the great financial situation to do this. B, these are way too many repairs that I want to deal with personally or take on. And then they could have made a better decision from there. However, I think how we've talked about it, houses, you know, big financial decisions are so emotional, and half the time make the decision off of the emotions instead of like the logic instead, you know? So yeah, this is an unfortunate mistake, but you know, it's kind of up to them where they go from here.
All right, that wraps up today's episode. And as always, the best way you can help us grow is by subscribing and sharing this with a friend.
Yeah, and if you want to have your money question answered on the show, you can visit our website, justanothermoneypodcast.com, and click the submit a question button. And don't forget to join us for another episode of Just Another Money Podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.